people like myself. I was listening to Kevin Stefanski talk about Baker Mayfield's improvement in ball handling and the necessity of making sure that a play action fake looks the same as a handoff, not only from the action of everybody else, but with the quarterback's hand placement, etc. I'm curious about Mac Jones and how he's handled nuances of the position like that, ball faking, just his mannerisms on a play, the consistency of repeating his actions. How has he developed in that area, and how did he get to this point?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think Mac came in with a really good set of fundamentals. From whether it be high school or at Alabama with Coach Saban, but a lot of his mechanics and ball handling, things like that are pretty good. Like every player in every position, they can always be improved and refined a little bit. But again, his foundation was pretty good on that. You're right. There's so many little things. When you handle the ball on every play, even though you might give it to somebody in the running game, there are a lot of little things that go with that, and sometimes things like just how good a quarterback is on handoffs, or how good he is on getting the ball deep to the running back. Sometimes that extra split second that the running back has because he gets the ball sooner or he gets a little bit deeper is the difference in a cut that can result in yards, maybe multiple yards, or maybe a few yards, or a quicker cut at the line of scrimmage. And a lot of people don't really see that; they just see the guy with the ball. But where he gets it, how he gets it, how cleanly he gets it, and the quarterback being able to hold sometimes a defender on the backside of a play, or make him hesitate for just a split second. Things like that on screen passes, being able to move a defender opposite of the screen and give a little bit more space on a misdirection play. Those are all little things, but they can make a huge difference in the result of the play. And so you're right, they're very important. We harp on those fundamentals all the time. I hit them every week, and it's just those little things can really add up. And I think you see players like Tom improve as long as he played. He continued to work very hard on those. We talk about him a lot, and it's now the same thing with Cam or Mac. Just all those little things, how really important they are in the success of the plays when the quarterback's not throwing the ball. And so yeah, it's can't overemphasize the importance of them. They're little, a lot of them go unseen, but they really matter. And I agree with Coach Stefanski on how young quarterbacks really can improve on that, especially where maybe their talent and their throwing, the passing of the ball was really the big thing for them. At this level, there's really just every little thing can make a difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question, Mike yourself, followed by Brian.
Thanks, Stacey. Good morning, Bill. Just a question about your game plan specific approach on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. What was the genesis of that, and how has that process kind of evolved for you over the years?
Well, it's evolved. It's kind of always, I think, the way I've visualized it. I think if you look at go back far enough, look at Sun Tzu, look at the great generals. You exploit your strengths and attack weaknesses. That's about as fundamental as it gets. So there's something that you can do well, you want to try to do it. If there's something that your opponent is weak at, you want to try to attack it. And if you can match those up, then that's a good way of attack. Sometimes it's not as easy to get to the weaknesses as you would like, because they do things to try to make it difficult for you to expose them in areas maybe that they're not as strong, whether that's schematically or personnel. There's obviously both are components there. And the same thing with his strength. I mean, if you keep doing the same thing all the time, that makes it easier for them to stop it. If you can find a way to use your strengths without them really knowing exactly what you're doing, or you have some little bit of disguise or distraction to it, then So I think fundamentally that's really what you try to do. Be sound, play to your strengths, and attack the opponent's weaknesses. Again, that's a much longer, detailed conversation, but at the heart of it, that's really where it starts for us every week. What do we need to stop, and what can we do, and then build it from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Next question, Jim McBride, followed by Mike Ness.
Morning, Coach.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about Nick Lombardi and what you've seen from his development in your program, and obviously where he's from a football family. Is there anything that he does that reminds you of his dad?
Yeah, well, Mike's had really had a big influence on my career. I learned so much from Mike working together with him in Cleveland. He taught me a lot about personnel. I tried to teach him, what I knew about football as a coach, and we, merged a lot of ideas, worked together. It was a tremendous relationship and learning experience. He had a huge impact when he came here, on the 14-15 team, and then really the 16 team was, he had a lot to do with the way that was put together, and kind of got us over the hump there in those years from being competitive in the early 2000s. That I feel like the value that he added in those, not just the years he was here, but even in subsequent years, and how much he helped me plan and grow as a coach, and to try to help manage the team was great. Mick was here. I've known Mick literally since he was born in Cleveland, and have watched him develop as a a person and as a coach, and have followed him from from college to the 49ers to the Jets, and he's been and here in personnel and here in coaching, and he's worked in quality control and the receivers and a passing game, but has a great football background both in personnel and in coaching, which is extremely valuable, similar to Josh, who started in personnel, started on personnel to defense to offense. Again, Mick has a great breadth of knowledge and is very detailed, and I think does a great job with individual fundamental instruction, as well as overall understanding schemes and personnel talent evaluations, and matchups of receivers against defensive backs, as well as patterns against coverages and all that. So young coach that really has a lot on the ball, good energy every day. Does really done a good job for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question, Mike Ness, followed by Chris Ryan.
Good morning, Bill. This is sort of similar on the theme of the questions of the morning. What have you observed that makes Josh McDaniels an effective coach when it comes really to developing quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think Josh does a great job really in every area. I don't think he really has any weaknesses as a coach. He understands what every player on the field's doing on offense and defense. He has a great vision for how to utilize the skills of the players on his side of the ball, and how to try to attack the weaknesses, whether it be personnel weaknesses or schematic weaknesses, or how to try to force the opponent into a situation that he's able to take advantage of. He's an excellent play caller, timing, setting up a sequence of plays, not necessarily one after another, but maybe it's by a situation, or building off something from earlier in the game that he knows the opponent's going to be over there talking about, and that's kind of what he wants him to do, is talk about that, because the next play is going to complement that, or the next time that situation comes up. So Josh is creative. He's a very forward thinker. He's got great poise during the game, never gets rattled. never, loses the situation, loses track of the situation. He's always a player or two ahead. And then if it changes and it doesn't follow that sequence, he can, adapt to it pretty quickly. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone to Josh and said, "Hey, Josh, what do you think about this?" Or "I think we should think about that." And he said, "Yeah, we just talked about that. That's what we're going to do." And I just have tremendous confidence in all the things that he does. But it's amazing. It's really been amazing to me how many times, and it's happened in reverse a few times, where he's like, "Hey, coach, we're going to change this. We're going to do this." And it was maybe a minute or two before I was about to go over to him and say, "Hey, Josh, what do you think about this or that?" And and he's already a step ahead of me on that. So yeah, he's again, it's just kind of like Saban when we were in Cleveland. Nick knew what every player on the field was doing. He knew what the guard keys were. He knew what the running back was key, and he knew what the nose guard was doing. He knew what everybody on the field was doing, and Josh is kind of the same way. He knows what all 11 guys are doing on offense, what their keys are, what their adjustments are, and all that, and he knows defensively how the guys taught to play certain blocks or routes or reads and how to attack them. So I've learned a lot from Josh. I really have. He's really excels in every area. I don't think it's any one thing. Play calling, fundamentals, strategy. It's really all of them.
Thank you.
Thanks. Drive safely, Mike.
Next one, Chris Bryan, followed by.
Morning, Bill. How are you?
Good.
Wanted to ask you kind of a general question about development, where obviously the skill set of a lot of players, particularly quarterbacks, can be seen as similar coming into the league, but obviously certain guys are able to stay in the league, certain guys are able to excel. What about an individual's development do you think allows for certain guys to excel while others do not? Is it more of a mental side of things and a physical side of things? How would you define that?
Yeah, well, Chris, it's really hard for me to comment on a player that I'm not coaching. So what goes through, what's involved in a situation outside of here, the player, where he is, what he's coached, what he's being told to do, what are the other circumstances around that team, his life, the job, the play. It's really hard to make an intelligent comment about that, because I just don't have enough information. So it's really, for me, I try to evaluate the players that we have, do the best job that we can with them, and there's a lot that goes into every position. Certainly the quarterback position is, between the protections, the running game, the execution of the passing game, the reads that go with it, the amount of different defenses that they see on a weekly basis. But then when you accumulate those over an entire season, the zones, the blitz zones, the man combinations, the linebackers that blitz, the linebackers that blitz when their guy blocks, which isn't really a blitz, but it is a blitz, the different man zone combinations, and the disguises that go with them, and then these teams that only have one or two defensive linemen on the field, so you're looking at 9 guys in coverage instead of 7, and which guys are rushing and which guys are the coverage players. It's it gets pretty complex, and so I think honestly a good player learns something every day, learns something almost really on every play, and they process that, and eventually those things come back, and not that we all don't make mistakes, and every quarterback's thrown an interception, and every quarterback's had a bad throw, but you minimize them, you learn from them, and when you see things again, you react just a split second faster the next time. And again, at that position, especially in the passing game, I mean, those guys got to make not only decisions, but then accurate judgments and throws in less than 2 seconds, and that's a lot to process in a short amount of time. And so coaching, preparation, recognition, anticipation, experience, and that all plays a part in it. So, yeah, what happens to some guys and what happens to others is, it's hard for me to say. I do think there's an element, though, of sometimes if you could give a player too much too fast, and then I'm not sure how easy it is for them to recover. So I think, finding the right time and the right, let's call it schedule, depending on the player, the situation, the team, and so forth, that's probably one of the hardest parts of coaching that position, from going back to whether it was, Tom to, Rohan and Cliff and Jacoby and Jimmy and Mac and Cam, who was a more experienced player but coming in a new system. There's a process with, any new player at that position, starter or backup, because those backups are one play away from being your starter. So they're part of it too. It's just kind of figuring out the right track to put them on, the right timing. They all see it a little bit differently. They all are a little more comfortable with one thing than another thing. How much of it's the same, how much of it varies, because you don't want to change the other 10 guys that are out there. That's all very, there's a touch and a feel to it as well. And I don't think anybody does it better than Josh does. Josh has a great management and style for that. But there's a lot to all that, no doubt. We could go on and on, but it's really, you're right on the money there.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll try to get in 2 or 3 more questions. We'll do Andrew Callahan and Zach Cox.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
Hey, Andrew.
So I just want to ask about Trent Brown. We talked to Coach Brasillo on Tuesday before, obviously, we saw Trent in practice, and he just mentioned anytime he sees him in the hallway, he's got a towel slung over his shoulder, seems to be working really hard. What have you not only seen from Trent the last couple of days in the field, but also just in his rehab, which obviously seemed to go a little bit longer than expected?
Yeah, Trent's, he's all in every day, does what we ask him to do. He's been a little bit limited at times, but he's tried not to let that affect what he can do, and he continues to work on things that he can do. Sometimes it's limited, but he's made good progress, and just take it day by day here. But we'll see where we are today, and then evaluate his week, and go from there.
And with practice here in about like a half hour, do you expect Damian or Ramondre to be able to practice today?
Yeah, well, I would say they're in the day-to-day category too. So we'll just kind of see how things went this morning, and get them to warm up out there and see how it goes, and see exactly what their situation is. That's pretty common. That's the way it is with a lot of players. You really, until they actually get warmed up, get ready to go, get into the process. A lot of times they don't know exactly how that's going to feel either, and just have to play it by ear.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys, we're going to do just one final question. Zach Cox, you all have it.
Thank you, Stacy. Morning, Bill.
Hey, Zach.
We heard from Jakob yesterday, and he was kind of expressing pride in the fact that the fullback position isn't extinct in the NFL. Obviously, it's been an important part of your offense for a long time, and I know you've touched on this in the past, but just what benefits does having a fullback in your offense have, and how have you seen that position kind of evolve over the last 10 or so years?
Yeah, I think it's been about the same over the last 10 or so years. I think it was really, before that where you started to see the real transformation. What it was when I first came here with, Pass and Mark Edwards and, guys like that. It was, a little bit different. But, I mean, the fundamental difference with a second back in the backfield, full back in the backfield, is you can create an extra gap on either side of the ball. When your guys are on the line of scrimmage and in 12 personnel, you can do that. It's harder, and you have fewer options. So if you bring a guy from one side of the ball back to the other side of the ball, there's only so much you can do there. There's a couple things, but that's really about it. And he's coming from pretty far away. So there's an element of timing there too. With a fullback in the backfield, he can go to either side of the ball. He can get there pretty quickly, and you have more combinations and more it's called blocking schemes, or more ways to attack the defense and build that extra gap. So that's the fundamental difference. What you do from there and what the fullback skills are and so forth. It's kind of the same thing in a passing game. It's hard to get a tight end out to the other side of the formation that he's lined up. You could do it on a misdirection bootleg play, but that's really about it. Whereas when the fullback's in the backfield, you have the ability to release him either way and get him out into either side of the pass pattern relatively quickly, which, again, for the defense, creates potential overloads, but they don't declare as early. They happen quickly after the snap, whereas most of the one-back sets, any of those overloads, you can see them before the ball snap, where just count the numbers. Is it 3-by-1 or 4-by-0 if the back's offset to that side and that type of thing. So that's in simple terms, that's really what the fullback does.
Great, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you, Coach.
thanks everyone.
When did Bud Light Seltzer start making lemonade?
Probably when 2020 handed us all those lemons.
New Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade, packed with lemonade flavor after a lemon of a year.
Opponents? I've gone up against thousands.
And there's an opponent we're all up against, COVID-19.
But there's a way to beat it. Get vaccinated.
So when it's your turn, roll up your sleeves.
And let's get to the finish line together.
When did Bud Light Seltzer start making lemonade?
Probably when 2020 handed us all those lemons.
New Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade, packed with lemonade flavor after a lemon of a year.
Opponents? I've gone up against thousands.